Today we approved a decision to provide 90 billion euros to Ukraine for the next 2 years.
December 2025. The world is not moving toward peace. It is moving toward calculation. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is no longer accelerating. It is slowing down, and that is precisely what makes it dangerous. Every Western decision is now read in Moscow as part of a larger pattern, not an isolated incident, not a spontaneous reaction, but a deliberate step-by-step escalation. In Russian military doctrine, deliberate escalation cannot go unanswered. If tolerated, it becomes precedent. And Western precedent is viewed in Moscow as a direct security threat. By late 2025, one word returns to the center of Kremlin planning: retaliation.
Возможности российской армии постоянно развиваются.
The European Union calls it stabilization. Russia calls it war extension. Approximately 90 billion euros. Not humanitarian relief, not post-war reconstruction, but funding designed to keep Ukraine fighting. What alarms Moscow is not only the size of the package, but the method behind it. The initial plan to use frozen Russian assets collapsed, not because of morality, but because of legal and market fear. The EU chose to borrow instead. That signals one thing clearly. The West is willing to absorb long-term financial risk to maintain pressure on Russia. In Russian strategic language, this crosses a threshold. Economic assistance becomes open escalation. And economic escalation opens the door to retaliation in other domains.
The first time.
Yeah.
It's good, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Russia has never promised to respond in kind, assuming that is a critical Western error. Financial pressure does not require financial retaliation. Political pressure does not demand diplomatic replies. Russia responds where impact is felt most deeply. Security perception. This is the core of Russian deterrence logic. Retaliation must alter the opponent's calculations, not merely express anger. When the West sends money, Russia talks about missile flight times. When the West speaks of European security, Russia highlights European vulnerability. This is not emotion. This is cold logic. President Putin never announced an attack on London, yet London entered the conversation. Western analysts themselves calculated it. Certain Russian systems could reach the British capital in approximately 8 minutes. This is not Russian propaganda, it is Western military math. Russia understands a simple truth of modern warfare. Threats do not need to be shouted. They need to be understood. 8 minutes is not about destruction. It is about decision time, reaction windows, and the margin for error approaching zero. Once European societies imagine that scenario, Russian deterrence has already succeeded. Hypersonic weapons are ideal deterrence tools because they do not need to be fired. Extreme speed, atmospheric maneuverability, unpredictable trajectories. Western air defense systems were designed for legacy threats. Hypersonics introduce unanswered questions. Russia does not claim interception is impossible. Russia asks a more uncomfortable question: are you certain you have enough time? In deterrence theory, uncertainty is stronger than certainty. Systems like Oreshnik are not battlefield tools. They are pressure instruments designed to force NATO planners into constant recalculation. Russian retaliation is not limited to statements. It appears in production figures, drones, missiles, ammunition. Not all are revolutionary, not all are advanced, but they are sufficient. Russia is not pursuing perfection, it is pursuing continuity. This is long-term retaliation. If the West wants a prolonged conflict, Russia signals readiness to sustain it. Historically, this has been Russia's advantage. Outlasting wealthier adversaries, enduring longer than societies that fatigue faster. Each new aid package produces political consequences, not in Moscow, in Europe. Public debate intensifies. How far will this go? Is our security truly guaranteed? This is where Russian retaliation operates most effectively, not on the battlefield, but in the cognitive space. No missiles need to be launched. The question itself does the work. As long as that question remains unresolved, political pressure inside the West continues to rise. At this stage, one thing is clear. This conflict is no longer about who wins today. It is about who can endure tomorrow. Russia has chosen a response that is cold, calculated, deliberate. The West has chosen long-term economic and political pressure. Two different approaches. One shared reality of rising tension. Yet the most important question is not about missiles, not about aid figures, but about direction. Is the world approaching a point of saturation that forces genuine negotiations? Or is it slowly normalizing life under permanent strategic threat? This is where thinking together becomes essential, not as supporters of one side, not as seekers of spectacle, but as observers who understand that every escalation carries global consequences. If you believe analysis like this matters, if you value discussions of global conflict that avoid shouting and raw propaganda and instead focus on logic, data, and strategic perspective, support this channel. Like the video to extend the reach of this discussion. Subscribe to ensure these analyses continue. And share your thoughts in the comments. Not to attack one another, but to think together. One important note before we close. This video does not aim to incite hatred. It does not promote violence, and it does not represent the official position of any government or institution. This is geopolitical analysis, based on publicly available information, presented for education and public discussion. Because in an era of global nerve warfare, understanding the situation is the first line of defense. Until the next analysis.